Evening all. Stephen with you once again on a Saturday evening here in London in the UK. Hope you're all well, that you've had a good week. 80% humidity in here as usual, so she'll probably struggle to keep this alight. Smoking my little Ukrainian pear wood, which thanks to Pirate Frog 333 I now know as my bumblebee pipe. Never saw it until he said it. But I love bees, they fascinate me. So yeah, that's always going to be my bumblebee pipe now. In it I'm smoking some Germain's plum cake mixture again, and I'm really struggling with this. The past couple of times I've tried to smoke it, I'm finding it maybe it's the way I've stored it, I don't know, but I'm finding it very harsh and cigarette-y, and I mean it is an incredibly fine cut. It is like rolling tobacco. Whether that's got something to do with it and it's burning a bit hot and I haven't got the knack of it yet, I don't know. But I shall persevere. It might help if I push the stem all the way in. As the actress said to the bishop. No, sorry. This is a family-friendly channel, though. I'll edit that out, I think. He's a cheeky chappy. Cheers all. It's been another summer week of cloud and rain here in the southeast UK. So, I've been stuck indoors most of the time. In fact, I can't remember when I last sat out in the garden. I love this music. It's an Elizabethan composer, John Dowland. Oh, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. What have I been up to? As I say, not a lot apart from sitting inside. Still growing the beard. Had a couple of new piercings done. In the old right ear to complement the left ear. I was going down there with my daughter anyway. She was getting a couple more piercings in her ears, so I've been meaning to get this side done. So I went for it. Just got the bars in at the moment till it's all healed up. I have to say, I recounted in an earlier video that I had a bad experience a few years back with a piercing gun, and I won't go near a piercing gun anymore. So I go to a place, it's a local place, a very well-known local place, what you might call a head shop, what we used to call them back in the day. And they use a gun if you want it, but otherwise they will pierce with a needle in the old-fashioned style. And that's why I've done. That's why I've done on this side, and that's why I've done with these two on this side. Far less traumatic, and I have got these thick, fleshy earlobes. So, you know, blasting a gun through it, it's not good. It's not good for the tissue. But the only trouble with the needle is it hurts like buggery. And I consider myself to have a fairly high pain threshold. I'm not bigging myself up, it's just the way things are. But he said, take a deep breath, and when he pushed that thing through, gee. And the worst thing was because I was having two done on the same side, so I knew what was coming for the second one. Don't worry, Ben, I'm not Ben Unicorn Piper was worried the way I wave this thing around, I'm going to have my eye out. I promise that if I do, I'll leave it in. So, cheers all, once again. Oh, this is still very harsh. You may have noticed that I think I've only once actually poured a beer on camera. And the reason for that with me is I hate fizzy beer. I mean, I've drunk all manner of alcoholic drinks throughout my life. I started with beer, I've run the full range of spirits and wines and fortified wines and one thing and another. And now I'm back to just beer. But one thing that's remained a constant with me with drinking beer is I hate fizzy beer. Traditional British hand-pulled ales aren't generally that fizzy anyway. They're meant to be dispensed just under top pressure and the pumping action of the person behind the bar, rather than being dispensed with a carbon dioxide rush. And that's my favourite kind of beer. But in the summer I drink lagers and they are fairly highly carbonated, and so when I pour them I shoot it into the glass to try and blast a lot of the carbon, or as much of the carbon dioxide out as I can. That's one advantage of that big beer stein I was drinking, I think in my last video, that you can shoot it in there and let it froth right up, which is probably, I think, a lot what you see at the Munich October Beer Fest. That often they'll have these steins, but at least half of it will be foam, because you can get the fizz out and then enjoy the beer. But yeah, I've hated fizzy beer since. I first started drinking beer back in the late 60s. Believe it or not, because my mum had left home, my dad didn't take much notice of what we were up to. And I was living in Bedfordshire at the time in a small village. And we used to go to the local town, which rejoiced in the name of Biggleswade. And there were pubs there. If you went in the back room, they were serving us. They knew we were kids, 14, 15 years old. And they'd serve you in the back room, no problem at all, because you never saw the police around there. But back in those days, sort of like the turn of the 60s, 70s, British beer was in, well, unless you were lucky enough to live near somewhere that still did it the old-fashioned way, British beer was in a pretty sorry state. The lager invasion hadn't really happened, and so we had what purported to be British bitter, but it was what was universally known by the name of keg, and it was dispensed under top pressure. So it was really fizzy with carbon dioxide pumped in there. And beers were also much lower in strength then as well, you know. Around 3% was like fairly much of the average. I say, unless you were lucky to live close to somewhere that did proper decent beer, but I didn't. And that's the way things were to stay up until the late 70s really, when in this country we, thank Lord, had an organisation called CAMRA, the Campaign for Real Ale. And they really have to be thanked for actually introducing real traditional British beers back into British pubs. Hand-pulled, low carbonation. Sometimes you'd get a pint of beer, it would be right up to the rim of the glass, no head on it at all. And some people would look at that and say, well, it's flat, but it was the way it was meant to be. And then in the early 70s, once I passed my driving test, because everyone went for driving lessons, because where I lived in a village, and if you didn't drive, you either hitchhiked or you could stand there for an hour or more waiting for a bus. And so everyone, at the moment they hit their 17th birthday, they learned to drive. Cars were cheap, petrol was cheap. and we started going out and about to clubs and discos. Difficult to imagine me in a disco looking at me now, but yeah, I did it. The old platform boots, baggies, tight-waisted shirt, undone down to here. I was no John Travolta, I'll tell you that. But then neither were 99% of the other blokes around. But the thing that went along with that, when getting out and about and going to these clubs, was when the lager invasion really started taking off and lager became the drink to drink. But sadly, in this country, we had lagers. They carried continental names like Carlsberg and Heineken, but they were brewed under licence in this country, and they bore no relation, other than the name, to the stuff that you could buy on the continent. Some of them went as low as like 2.5%. And what made it worse, because no one really knew how to serve this stuff, other than the fact it was meant to be chilled. Most places chilled this stuff to as close to freezing point as you could physically get. So it was highly carbonated. I mean, as fizzy as lemonade or Coke, chilled almost to freezing point. And what made it worse was that a lot of the places we went to, because they were for the young people, they were mindful of the fact that occasionally a couple of young bucks would actually manage to drink enough of this stuff to get tipsy. Not easy. And then they might fall out, you know, have a disagreement over the hand of a young lady. And so the beer was served in thin plastic pint mugs, so that if they should come to fisticuffs, one of them couldn't use the glass to glass the other one. So, yeah, almost freezing point, carbonated to within an inch of its life and served in a plastic glass at about 2.5% alcohol. I think I'm to be commended for persevering. Because otherwise it'd be enough to put some people off beer for life. But fortunately I soldiered through. And as I say, in the late 70s we had the camera campaign that went on, and we started getting proper beer back into English pubs. Proper traditional bitters and ales, hand poured. What now that you call craft beer, because it's put in a fancy bottle and given a fancy name. But then it was all available on draft again, and it was a transformation. And fortunately, we haven't looked back since then. The prices, of course, have shot up to the point that I can't really afford to drink in pubs very often. I mean, every few months or so I go up to town, up to the West End, and meet a couple of old friends, and we go in the pub and have a drink. But up there in the West End of London, you're paying a minimum of about £4 for a pint of beer. So what, that's $5, $6, I don't know how much now. When I first started drinking in pubs, we could get a pint of bitter for 10p, which is probably about 15 cents or something like that. And now, I don't understand how people can afford to do it. £4 a pint. I've even paid more than that. And that's another thing, you know, because I go in somewhere now if I meet up with my friends, and they've got all these new beers, all these guest beers on the bar. But the trouble is, you know, when you're putting in an investment of £4 or £5 and then you find you don't actually much care for it, so I tend to stick to what I know. So when I meet up with them, I tend to drink, it's a British brewer called Green King. I mean, it's probably part of some big conglomerate now, but they still brew the traditional way. And it was one of the first beers that I started off drinking, because they used to have a brewery in Biggleswade. And in fact, one of the pubs that allowed us to drink underage, actually the brewery, the Green King Brewery, was the other side of this back road behind the pub, and they just pumped the stuff straight through. So I drink Green King Abbott Ale when I'm out with my mates, and very, very occasionally sort of dip my toe in the water and try something different. It's passable, but it's not getting any better. I still find it quite harsh. But maybe it's me, I've still got the sore mouth thing going on at the moment. I've been persevering with the snuff as well, but taking it easy, not being stupid about it. I still can't take it without sneezing. I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. So any experienced snuffers out there, tell me how you do it. I mean, it usually comes down to 1 or 2 powerful sneezes after I first had some. Whereas the first time I took it, I was sneezing for ages. But still persevering with it, and I'm definitely going to invest in some more. But next time I do a tobacco order, because the stuff's dirt cheap, but of course unless I buy it with something else, I'm paying a huge amount of shipping for it. Anyway, I expect that's it all for tonight. Hope to join you again tomorrow. I keep waiting for that sunshine to make another appearance out in the back garden. And now I better go and play with the boy, because he's feeling a bit sulky. Because my girls were both here. Both my daughters were here last night, which is a rare occurrence. And he goes apeshit when they're both here. He loves it. But they're both working tonight, so they're staying at their mother's afterwards because it's easier for them to get back to, and it's a late finish. So he's a bit sulky because of that, and also we went out for the walk this evening. It tipping down with rain, got absolutely soaked, and he doesn't like the rain, and neither do I. So I'm standing there in the middle of the local common with the rain lashing down like stair rods, getting soaking wet. I'm thinking, he doesn't like it, I don't like it, why are we both here? You've got to, haven't you? They've got to be walked. Anyway, 18 minutes. Bye bye all, speak to you again tomorrow. Ta-da.